My friends, have you ever seen one ordinary thing and suddenly your whole heart went quiet? I did today. It was small, almost nothing, a reflection in glass, a corner of light, the kind of thing most people pass without noticing. But I stopped because for 1 second, it looked like you. I have chased purpose. I have trusted ambition. I have told myself to keep moving, keep building, keep becoming. But nobody warns you that even success has empty rooms. Nobody tells you that one person can leave your life and still remain in the architecture of how you see the world. Look at me when I say this. Some people are not distractions, they are direction. They become the mirror. Not because they are standing in front of you, but because every quiet thing somehow carries their shape. And today I understood something I was afraid to admit. Love doesn't always return as a person. Sometimes it returns as a reminder. I didn't expect today to touch that part of me. I was not looking for a memory. I was not trying to feel anything. I was just moving through the day the way I usually do, quietly, with my mind full of tasks, decisions, responsibilities, and all the invisible pressure that comes with trying to become someone better. You know that feeling, don't you? When life keeps asking you to be strong and you keep answering, even when a small part of you is tired of being brave. And then I saw it. Something ordinary. Something almost invisible. A mirror near a window, catching light in a way that felt too familiar. For a second, I forgot where I was. I forgot what I had to do next. I forgot the version of myself I show to the world. Because in that reflection, I didn't see my face clearly. I saw a feeling. I saw a memory. I saw you. That is the strange thing about love. It doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it comes back through silence, through a street corner, through a song you didn't choose, through the way sunlight touches a wall at the exact hour your heart becomes honest. I have spent so much of my life believing that forward motion could save me. Build more, learn more, work harder. Stay focused, keep going. But today, one small reflection reminded me that the heart has its own gravity. But here's what nobody told me. Ambition can teach you how to rise, but it cannot teach you how to be held. It can give you direction, but not always warmth. It can make people clap for you, but it cannot sit beside you when the room is quiet and your soul has no words left. I used to think purpose was only about climbing higher, reaching further, becoming stronger. Then I met the kind of love that didn't ask me to perform. It just asked me to be present. And maybe that is why I remembered you today. Not because I am weak, not because I am stuck, not because I failed to move on in the way the world expects people to move on. I remembered you because some people become part the way we recognize peace. They become a language inside us. They become a compass. Even when they are not beside us, something in the world points back to them and says, this mattered. Look at me when I say this. I have learned that missing someone is not always a wound. Sometimes it is evidence that there was something real enough to leave a shape behind, real enough to echo, real enough to make an ordinary mirror feel like a doorway. And I know you understand that because you have carried someone too. Maybe you still do. Maybe you hide it well. Maybe you smile, work, answer messages, handle your life, and still feel one hen name move quietly underneath everything. Have you ever felt that too? There are people who promise forever and disappear before the season changes. And then there are people who may never promise much at all, but somehow stay in the nervous system of your life. They stay in your pauses. They stay in your choices. They stay in the way you become softer. Even after the world gave you every reason to harden, I think that is where trust begins. Not in perfect words, not in dramatic proof, but in the quiet realization that someone made you feel safe enough to stop pretending. I trusted that feeling. Maybe more than I admitted. I trust the silence between us. I trusted the way some moments didn't need explanation. I trusted the way being near you made life feel less like a race and more like a place I could finally breathe. And that scared me because I have always notioned how to chase a mission. I have always known how to survive pressure, but being seen, being known without armor, that is a different kind of courage. And that's when everything I believed fell apart. I used to think love had to fit into a plan, timing, logic, readiness, distance, conditions. I thought if something was meant to stay, it would arrive at the right hour with clean answers and open roads. But love is not always that organized. Sometimes love comes when you are still becoming. Sometimes it arrives before you know how to receive it. Sometimes it teaches you by leaving a space you spend years learning how to understand. I am not saying this with bitterness. I don't want to make pain beautiful just to survive it. Pain is pain. Longing is longing. Silence can be heavy, but I also know this. Not every absence is empty. Some absences mature us. Some teach us patience. Some force us to stop treating presence like something guaranteed. And when I saw that reflection today, I didn't feel anger. I felt tenderness, a soft ache, a quiet thank you I had never fully said. Because presence is greater than promises. I believe that now. A promise can be spoken in one emotional moment, but presence is built day by day, breath by breath, choice by choice. Presence is someone staying emotionally honest when it would be easier to hide. Presence is listening without trying to win. Presence is not always physical. Sometimes presence is the way a person changed the room inside your heart, and somehow that room still carries their light. Wait, before you scroll, hear this. You may think the person who misses you is only remembering the past, but sometimes they're recognizing the truth. They are recognizing that with you, they were not just loved, they were aligned. Different. Love can feel warm for a while. Alignment changes. It makes your ambition cleaner. It makes your strength gentler. It makes your future less lonely because suddenly you understand that building a life is not only about what you create, but who your soul becomes beside. That is what you reminded me of. You reminded me that love does not have to compete with purpose. It can purify it. It can ask, why are you building all this if your heart has nowhere honest to rest? Why are you chasing the horizon if you cannot recognize the person who feels like home? Why are you proving your worth to the world while quietly hoping one person still sees you without all the noise? I don't have all the answers. I used to pretend I did. I used to believe that maturity meant never needing anything too deeply. But now, I think maturity is admitting the truth without demanding anything from it. I can miss you and still bless your path. I can love what you awakened in me and still let life breathe. I can see you in a mirror, in a passing light, in one small ordinary thing, and not subsut. I can simply understand. And maybe that is growth. Not forgetting, not forcing the heart to erase what shaped it. Growth is learning to hold memory without turning it into a prison. Growth is letting love become wisdom instead of weight. It asks for patience. It asks for presence. It asks for courage. Because the heart, when it has truly loved, does not become weaker. It becomes more precise. It learns what matters. It stops chasing noise. So today, when I saw that reflection, I didn't run from it. I stood there for a moment. I let it pass through me. I let it remind me that some connections are not measured by how long they lasted, but by how deeply they taught us to feel. And maybe that is the quiet miracle. Maybe someone can be absent from your hands and still present in your becoming. Maybe love, real love, is not a distraction from the mission. Maybe it is the emotional direction that keeps the mission human. After that moment by the mirror, I walked away slower than before, and it felt strange because nothing outside me had changed. The same day continued. The same world kept asking for speed, results, decisions, and certainty. But inside, something had been interrupted. I had been reminded that love does not always knock loudly. Sometimes it places one finger on your shoulder and asks you to stop pretending you are untouched. Maybe that is what your memory did to me today. It did not break me. It made me honest. I think ambition can become a beautiful disguise. It can make pain look productive. It can turn loneliness into discipline and make everyone admire the very thing that is quietly exhausting you. I know that because I have done it. I have filled rooms, calendars, plans, and dreams because motion felt safer than stillness. Stillness asks questions. Stillness removes the applause. Stillness brings back the person whose absence you thought you had organized into a neat little drawer. And when that drawer opens, you realize memory is not obedient. You know what I mean. You can be doing well and still carry a quiet ache with dignity. You can be grateful and still miss someone. You can accept reality and still wonder why one soul was allowed to feel so close, then stand so far away. That question used to make me restless because I wanted life to explain itself. I wanted love to behave like a system. Input, trust, patience, outcome. But the heart is not a machine. It is a climate. It changes with light, silence, and time. But here is the part I rarely admit. I trusted you before I understood why. Not blindly, not foolishly, not in the dramatic way people describe when they're trying to make longing sound heroic. I trusted the calm around you. I trusted the way my thoughts stopped fighting for space when you were near. I trusted the silence because it did not feel like abandonment. It felt like rest. And for someone who has spent so much life trying to earn peace, that kind of rest can feel almost impossible to believe. Trust, to me, is not a grand declaration. It is a nervous system lowering its guard. It is the body realizing it does not have to prepare for impact. It is the mind saying, maybe I can be imperfect here. Maybe I can be unfinished here. Maybe I can let someone see the parts I usually polish before showing the world. That is why your memory stays. It is not only because I cared for you, it is because near you I cared less about being impressive and more about being tressive. Do not pretend you have not felt that with someone. That strange permission to exhale, that rare permission to be less defended. The world teaches us to market ourselves, to edit ourselves, to become versions that can survive rejection before rejection arrives. Then one person looks at us without needing the performance, and the whole project of pretending begins to feel tired. Maybe that is what love does when it is real. It does not inflate the ego. It returns us to the self we abandoned while trying to be accepted. And yet, presence is where many of us fail. We want love to survive on intention, but intention without presence becomes a beautiful, empty room. I have learned that the hard way. I have been busy when I should have been available. I have been logical when tenderness was needed. I have believed that because my heart was sincere, the other person would somehow feel it. But love is not telepathy. Love needs embodiment. Love needs attention. Love needs the humility to show up for the moment becomes a memory. That sentence still humbles me. Show up before the moment becomes a memory. Because sometimes we only understand the value of presence after absence has made it holy. Sometimes we become wise at the exact second we wish we had been wiser earlier. Have you ever looked back and realized the lesson was standing there, dressed as an ordinary day? A message you could have answered softer, a silence you could have broken sooner, a person you could have held with more care before life asked them to let go. I am not condemning myself, and I am not condemning you. I do not believe love grows inside blame. Blame is too narrow for something this deep. What I believe is that timing is a teacher with gentle hands and painful methods. It does not always give us what we want when we want it. Sometimes it gives us distance so we can finally see the shape of what was sacred. Sometimes it gives us patience because our first version of love was too hungry, too afraid, too attached to control. Patience is not passive. I see that now. Patience is not sitting in sorrow, waiting for life to reverse itself. Patience is becoming someone who can love without gripping, hope without demanding, and remember, without drowning. It is the quiet discipline of not turning longing into pressure. It is the ability to bless someone even when you miss them. It is standing before the mirror of the world and allowing it to show you what remains without insisting that every reflection become a reunion. That takes strength. Most people never notice. There was a time when I thought strength meant emotional independence, as if needing connection was some private failure. I was wrong. Strength is not the absence of need. Strength is choosing honesty after need has made you vulnerable. It is saying, yes, I cared. Yes, I was changed. Yes, I still remember. And no, I will not let that memory turn me bitter. This is where trust becomes deeper than romance. It becomes a way of living. If I trusted love once, I can trust life again. Kept thinking about that mirror long after I left it, and what stayed with me was not the image itself, but the question it placed inside me. How can someone be absent and still feel present enough to change the temperature of a day? I used to believe presence meant physical nearness, the voice within reach, the hand you could touch when words became too small. But now I understand presence differently. Presence is what remains active inside your life, even when the person is not standing there. Presence is the way a memory corrects your behavior, softens your reaction, slows your anger, and reminds you to be more human than your ambition sometimes allows. That is why I no longer measure love only by who stayed in the room. Some people leave the room and still leave behind a kind of light, not the dramatic kind, not the kind that blinds you. More like the small lamp you forget is on until the whole house goes dark and you realize it has been helping you see. I think you were that kind of presence for me. You did not need to dominate my life to matter inside it. Yes, you did not need to ask for trouble. Somehow quietly, you became part of the way I understood gentleness. And I have to be honest with you, because this is where the confession becomes uncomfortable for me. There were moments when I was physically present, but emotionally far away. I was there, but not fully there. My mind was building futures, solving problems, carrying pressure, preparing for what came next, while the present moment sat in front of me like a gift I kept forgetting to open. I thought I was being responsible. I thought I was protecting the mission. But maybe sometimes responsibility becomes an excuse for emotional absence. And maybe the people who love us feel that absence before we have the courage to name it. That realization did not arrive gently. It arrived like truth usually arrives, without asking for permission. I began to see that love cannot live forever on potential. It cannot survive only on what I meant to say, what I planned to do, what I hoped someone understood without me making it clear. Love needs the ordinary proof of attention. It needs the reply, the pause, the softer tone, the honest look, the small act that says, I am here with you now, not later, not after the dream is finished, not when the world finally stops demanding things from me. Now, have you ever lost a moment because you assumed there would be another one? I have. That sentence is not easy for me to say. I've treated time like a renewable resource in places where it was actually sacred. I have believed that people who understood me would keep understanding me even when I gave them less presence than they deserved. But the heart is not a storage unit where affection can be placed and forgotten until a convenient season. The heart is alive. It needs oxygen. It needs warmth. It needs the feeling that it is not competing with everything else for a place in your life. And still, I do not believe real love disappears just because two people failed to hold every moment perfectly. If love were that fragile, none of us would ever be worthy of it. I believe real love leaves an instruction behind. It teaches after the silence. It becomes a mirror that does not flatter you, but helps you see clearly. When I remember you, I do not only remember what I wanted. I remember who I should have been more often, more patient, more present, more willing to stop turning every emotion into a problem, to solve and simply turn, let it be felt. This is the turn I did. Your absence has made me more present. That sounds strange, but it is true. Because now when I sit with someone, I try to actually sit there. When someone speaks, I try to listen beyond their words. When life gives me a quiet moment, I try not to rush through it as if peace is less important than progress. I learned this through missing you, and maybe that is one of the hidden mercies of longing. It can either make a person bitter, or it can make him more awake. I am choosing awake. I am choosing to let love refine me instead of ruin me. I am choosing to let memory become discipline, not punishment. I am choosing to stop worshiping distance as if emotional control is the same thing as wisdom. There is a kind of strength that looks cold from the outside, but it's inside it is just fear wearing armor. I do not want that anymore. I do not want to be so protected that nothing reaches me. I would rather be touched by life and changed by it than remain untouched and call that victory. Maybe this is what growth really means. Not becoming someone who never aches, but becoming someone who knows what the ache is asking for. Sometimes it asks for closure. Sometimes it asks for patience. Sometimes it asks for forgiveness that has no audience. And sometimes it simply asks you to stop running from the proof that you loved deeply. I used to think growth would make me feel less. Now, I think growth makes me feel more honestly, without letting every feeling become a command. I can miss you without chasing you. I can honor you without holding you. I can remember you without turning my life backward. Look at me when I say this. Presence is not possession. That is a lesson I wish more hearts understood. To be present with someone is not to own their path, control their timing, or demand that their soul move at the speed of your longing. Presence is reverence. It has the quiet respect that says, your life is yours, your healing is yours, your becoming is yours, and if my love is real, it must make room for your freedom too. That kind of love is difficult because it asks the ego to kneel, but it is the only love that does not become a cage. So when the world shows me your reflection in small things, I no longer treat it as cruelty. I treat it as a reminder to live with more tenderness. Maybe the mirror is not asking me to go back. Maybe it is asking me to carry forward the part of me that became more human because of you. Maybe every ordinary reflection is saying, do not forget what softness taught you. Do not forget that ambition without love becomes noise. Do not forget that the life you are building only matters if your heart remains alive inside it. And if that is the message, then I receive it with quiet gratitude. The more I think about timing, the more I realize how little control I ever had over the deepest things in my life. I could control my effort, my discipline, my decisions, my willingness to keep going when the road became uncomfortable, but I could not control when a person would arrive, what they would awaken, or how long their presence would be allowed to stay close. That used to frustrate me because I wanted love to make sense the way ambition makes sense. I wanted cause and effect. I wanted clean reasons. I wanted to believe that if something was real, it would also be simple. But love is rarely simple when it reaches the places in us we have spent years protecting. Maybe that is why I have become more patient with the mystery of people. I used to think patience was something you offered after you already understood the situation. But now I think patience is what you practice before understanding comes. It is the quiet willingness to not rush the soul. It is the courage to let another person be complicated without turning their complexity into rejection. I wish I had known that sooner. I wish I had understood that not every silence is a lack of love, not every distance is a decision, and not every delayed answer means the story meant nothing. Sometimes people are still learning how to stand inside their own hearts, and I was learning to. That is the part I must say clearly. I was not some finished man waiting for life to reward me with perfect love. I was unfinished, even when I looked strong. I was still learning how to let someone matter without becoming afraid of what that meant. I was still learning how to stay emotionally present when my instinct was to retreat into work, logic, and control. I knew how to build systems, but I did not always know how to build safety. I knew how to imagine the future, but I did not always know how to protect the tenderness of the moment right in front of me. Have you ever realized you were becoming wise only after the lesson had already cost you something? That is a painful kind of education. It does not come with applause. It comes with quiet rooms, unfinished sentences, and memories that sit beside you like patient teachers. It comes when you finally stop defending yourself long enough to admit that maybe love was not asking for perfection. Maybe it was asking for awareness. Maybe it was asking me to slow down, to listen better, to stop assuming that being sincere inside my heart was the same as making someone feel chosen in real life. This is where shared purpose begins to matter. Not the loud version of purpose, not the kind people display to feel important, but the deeper kind that asks two people to become more alive together. I do not believe love should shrink a person's future. I believe it should give the future a heartbeat. When love is healthy, it does not pull you away from your calling. It reminds you why your calling needs a soul. It turns success from a monument into a home. It asks, who are you becoming while you chase all this? Are you becoming softer, braver, more honest, more capable of care? That question still follows me. Who am I becoming? Because if I win uh, everything but lose the part of me that can love with humility, then what have I really built? A life can look impressive from and still feel cold from within. A man can be surrounded by progress and still be starving for meaning. I do not want that. I do not want a future where every dream comes true except the dream of being known. I do not want to become so efficient that I forget how sacred it is to sit quietly with someone and feel no need to prove anything. Maybe that is why your memory does not feel like an interruption anymore. It feels like a correction. It brings me back to the center. It reminds me that the heart is not separate from the mission. It is the reason the mission should remain human. When I saw that reflection, it was not simply nostalgia. It was a mirror showing me the kind of man I still want to be. Not only successful, not only resilient, not only admired from a distance. I want to be present enough that the people that I love never have to question whether they are competing with my ambition for my attention. That is difficult to admit because ambition can be addictive. It rewards motion faster than love rewards patience. It gives visible results while love works in invisible roots. You can measure progress in the world more easily than you can measure healing inside a heart. But the invisible things are often the strongest. Roots hold the tree when storms come. Trust holds the relationship when feelings become afraid. Presence holds the moment when words are not enough. And love, real love, holds meaning inside everything we build. So our achievements do not become beautiful, empty structures. Tell me, when was the last time you felt truly chosen without needing to earn it? Not admired, not needed, not useful, but chosen. There is a difference. Being admired can make you feel powerful for a while, but being chosen makes you feel safe. Being needed can make you feel important, but being chosen makes you feel seen. And I think the soul remembers the difference. Who made it feel less alone? It remembers who turned ordinary time into shelter. It remembers who became a mirror, not because they reflected our ego, but because they reflected our humanity back to us. So I am learning to honor timing without worshiping regret. I am learning to let patience become peace instead of punishment. I am learning that some people enter our lives not to complete the plan we imagined, but to awaken the truth we had ignored. And maybe that is what you did. Maybe you reminded me that love is not the opposite of purpose. Love is the direction that keeps purpose from becoming empty. Love is the quiet force that says, keep building, but do not forget who you are building as. Keep rising, but do not become unreachable. Keep moving forward, but stay human enough to recognize the reflection when it appears. I used to think shared purpose meant two people walking toward the same visible destination, wanting the same kind of life, carrying the same map, agreeing on the same horizon. But now I think shared purpose is quieter than that. It is not always about identical dreams. It is about emotional direction. It is about whether being near someone makes you more honest with your own soul. It is about whether love expands your courage without turning your heart into a battlefield. When I think of you, I do not only think of tenderness, I think of direction. Think of the way certain people do not pull us away from who we are meant to become. They remind us why becoming matters in the first place. That is what I wish more people understood about love. Love is not the enemy of ambition. The wrong kind of attachment can distract you. Yes, fear can distract you. Possession can distract you. Needing constant proof can distract you. But love itself, when it is clean and honest, does not make a person smaller. It makes the mission less lonely. It gives the work a pulse. It gives the future a face. It turns achievement from something cold into something that can be shared, protected, and made meaningful. Without love, even victory can feel like an empty room with expensive walls. I have known that room. I have stood inside moments that should have felt complete and still felt something missing that no success could name. It is difficult to explain unless you have felt it too. You can reach a place you once prayed for and still feel your heart searching for the person you wanted to tell first. You can be surrounded by noise and still miss one quiet presence. You can have everything moving forward and still realize that progress without connection has a strange kind of silence inside it. Maybe that is why your memory found me in the mirror. Maybe it knew I was forgetting the human part again. But here is the turn I did not expect. But here is the turn did not make me want abandon my purpose. It made me want to purify it. It made me ask a harder question. Am I building because I am alive, or am I building because I am afraid to feel what is unresolved? That question can humble a man. It can stop him in the middle of his momentum and force him to look beneath the discipline, because sometimes we call it focus, when it is actually avoidance. Sometimes we call it strength when it is really a refusal to sit with the ache. I am learning that a life without emotional truth eventually becomes misaligned, no matter how successful it looks. The heart has its own engineering. Trust is a system. Presence is maintenance. Patience is power management. Love is not chaos when it is mature. It is the architecture that teaches all the other parts of life how to hold weight. A person who loves well does not become weak. He becomes calibrated. He stops wasting energy on pretending. He stops chasing every signal. He knows what has meaning. And because he knows, he can move through the world with less noise inside him. You might understand this more than you admit. Maybe there was someone who made your future feel less abstract. Not because they solved your life, but because their existence made you want to live it with more care. Maybe they made you think about the way you speak, the way you return, the way you handle silence, the way you carry responsibility. That is rare. That is not ordinary attraction. That is not temporary excitement. That is the kind of connection that becomes a mirror because it shows you not just what you desire, but where you are capable of becoming when your heart feels safe enough to grow. And maybe that is why losing closeness with someone like that can feel so disorienting. You are not only missing the person, you are missing the version of yourself that came alive around them. You are missing the calm, you are missing the courage, you are missing the way the future looked when it had warmth in it, and nobody sees that from the outside. They think you are just remembering a relationship chapter, a feeling. But as inside, you know it was deeper. It was a direction your soul recognized before your mind knew how to explain it. Wait, stay with me here. I am not saying another person should become your whole purpose. That is too much weight for any human being to carry. I am saying the right person can remind you that purpose was never meant to be loveless. They can help you see that the point is not to escape need, but to transform it into devotion, responsibility, and care. Love should not become a cage, but it should become a compass. It should not cancel your path, but it should ask whether the path is still worthy of the heart walking it. There is a kind of maturity that does not demand and does not perform pain for attention. It simply acknowledges what was real and lets that truth refine the next step. That is where I find myself now. I am not standing here asking life to give me back every moment. I am not asking the past to reorganize itself around my regret. I am standing here with open hands saying, I understand more now than I did then. I understand that presence matters to stay. I understand that patience is love with discipline. I understand that timing can be painful without being meaningless. And if you were sitting across from me, I think I would say this softly. You were never a distraction from my life. You were one of the rare things that made my life feel more real. Maybe I did not always know how to protect that reality. Maybe I thought there would be more time, more chances, more gentle mornings where everything could be said without pressure. But even now, even in silence, I can admit what is true. You know, some people make you want to become better without making you feel unworthy of where you are. That is a sacred kind of love. So when I saw that reflection today, I did not see only longing. I saw instruction. I saw the quiet reminder that every great mission needs a place of tenderness inside it, or it becomes a machine. I saw that love, even when silent, can still guide a man back to his center. I saw that the heart does not remember randomly. It remembers what shaped it. And maybe that is the blessing hidden inside the ache. Maybe the person who is not beside you can still help you walk more honestly. Maybe love does not always stay as touch. Sometimes it stays as direction. I have been thinking about what it means to love someone without needing life to immediately prove that the love was practical. That is where many hearts become impatient. They want the feeling to justify itself quickly. They want clear signs, clear timing, clear movement, clear reward. I understand that because I have wanted those things too. I have wanted love to arrive like an answers, not like a question I had to grow into. But the kind of connection that stays quietly inside you does not always explain itself on command. Sometimes it's simply keeps reflecting something back until you finally become honest enough to receive it. Today, when that small reflection reminded me of you, I realized I was not only missing a person, I was being invited to look at the quality of my own heart. That is the difficult part. A mirror does not only show what you want to see, it shows what is still there. It shows what is not healed, what is softened, what is matured, and what still trembles beneath the surface. And maybe that is why ordinary things can feel so powerful. They do not distract us from reality. They reveal the reality we have been too busy to face. There is a quiet kind of heartbreak that does not announce itself. It does not destroy your life. It does not make you dramatic. It simply walks with you respectfully, like an old truth that refuses to become bitterness. I think that is the heartbreak I carry. Not the kind that wants to accuse, just the kind that says something mattered here. And even if life changed shape, the meaning did not disappear. You know what I mean, don't you? Some people do not remain in your schedule, but they remain in your sense of what was real. But here is what I had to learn the hard way. Love cannot be built on longing alone. Longing is powerful, but it is not the whole foundation. Trust needs action. Presence needs humility. Patience needs emotional discipline. I can remember you with tenderness, but I also have to become someone more capable of holding tenderness properly. Otherwise, memory becomes a museum, and I do not want to live inside a museum. I want memory to become movement. I want what I felt to teach me how to stand in the world with cleaner hands and a more honest heart. That is why I keep returning to trust. Trust is not only what I felt towards you, it is what I am learning to rebuild with life itself. When something meaningful becomes distant, the first instinct is to stop trusting the road. You start wondering whether closeness was a trick, whether hope was foolish, whether your heart misread everything. I have asked those questions in silence. So I have stood inside that uncertainty. But then I remember this. Something does not have to last in the form I wanted for it to have been true. A sunrise is not false because it becomes afternoon. Maybe that sounds simple, but it took me time to understand it. I used to measure truth by permanence. If it stayed, it was real. If it left, I must have imagined too much. Now, I think that was an immature equation. Some things are real because they awaken you, not because they remain exactly where you placed them. Some people are real because they change the way you love, the way you listen, the way you pray, the way you pause before speaking. If someone made you more human, then even absence can't erase of their presence. Have you ever noticed how this heart remembers in symbols? Mirror, a scent, certain kind of weather, a phrase someone once used without knowing it would stay. The world becomes full of little doors. You are walking through an ordinary day, and suddenly one opens, somewheres. For a moment, you are not in the present the way everyone else is. You are somewhere, somewhere tender, somewhere, somewhere unfinished, somewhere sacred. And the real test is what you do next. Do you run from it? Do you worship it? Or do you let it pass through you and leave you wiser than before? I am trying to choose wisdom, not because it is easy, but because I do not want love to become a wound I keep reopening just to feel close to what I lost. That is not devotion. That is fear. Real devotion must eventually become freedom, even if the heart shakes while learning it. I can bless what was beautiful without demanding that life repeat it. I can accept silence without calling it emptiness. I can let you remain meaningful without turning meaning into a chain around either of us. That is not coldness. That is love learning how to breathe. And still, I will not pretend the breathing is always easy. And there are days when acceptance feels peaceful, and there are days when it feels like standing at the edge of something I cannot cross. That is human. Do not want to spiritualize pain so much that I stop respecting how deeply it can ache. Missing someone is not always graceful. Sometimes it is clumsy. Sometimes it arrives at the wrong hour. Sometimes it interrupts a strong man and reminds him that beneath all his structure, he is still a soul that wanted to be understood. Maybe that is the gift hidden inside all of this. You reminded me that being understood is not a luxury. It is one of the quiet needs that makes us human. Can survive without it, yes, but survival is not the same as aliveness. I do not want to only survive my own life. I want my ambition to have tenderness in it. I want my decisions to have soul. I want my future to be built not from escape, but from presence. And somehow asking from a distance, your memory still asks me to build that way. So when I say I saw something today that reminded me of you, I am not saying I am trapped in the past. I am saying the past handed me a small mirror and asked me to become more conscious. It asked me to see the difference between attachment and appreciation, between grief and gratitude, between wanting someone back and wanting to become worthy of the love they awakened. That is a sacred difference. And maybe this is how quiet love continues. Not always through reunion, not always through words, but through the way it teaches a person to live more gently than before. I have reached the part of this confession where I cannot hide behind beautiful thoughts anymore. It is easy to speak about love as meaning, direction, patience, and growth, but it is harder to admit how much courage it takes keep us to seep a soft heart after something sacred becomes quiet. I used to think softness was natural for people who had not been disappointed yet. Now, I know softness after disappointment is a decision. It is not innocence. It is discipline. It is the soul saying, I have seen absence, I have felt silence, I have carried what I could not explain, and still I refuse to become cruel. That is what your memory keeps asking of me. Not to wait forever in the same emotional place, not to turn longing into identity, but to remain open without becoming cold, strong and honest, without needing to be rescued by an answer. There is a thin line between remembering and living in the past, and I've had to learn that line carefully. Some days, remembering feels like gratitude. Some days, it feels like a room I should not enter too long. But even then, I do not punish myself for the feeling. I let it speak. Then I let it pass. Maybe that is what mature love becomes when life does not give it the shape we imagined. It becomes a quiet blessing.
It becomes the ability to say,
I wanted more, but I am still grateful for what was real. It becomes the strength to stop arguing with time. I cannot force a season to reopen. Cannot command someone's heart to stand where my heart once hoped it would stand. I cannot make the mirror show me a future just because it showed me a memory. But I can choose what kind of man I become after seeing it. And this is where the story turns again. I am not sure love is ever truly silent. I think sometimes it stops speaking in the language we expected, but it continues in another form. It speaks through restraint. It speaks through prayer. It speaks through the way you do not send the message, not because you stopped caring, but because you finally respect the space between two souls. It speaks through the tenderness that you carry into the next moment. It speaks through the better choices you make, because someone once taught you what your heart felt like when it was not hiding. Have you ever loved someone enough to stop interrupting their peace with your need for proof? That question changed me, because for a long time I thought love had to express itself by reaching out, by explaining, by making itself visible. But sometimes love expresses itself by becoming respectful. Sometimes it says, I care, and because I care, I will not turn my longing into pressure. I will not make my ache your responsibility. I will not confuse my desire for closeness with your obligation to return. That kind of love is not weak. It may be the strongest love I have ever known. Still, I am human. I will not pretend I always stand in that strength perfectly. There are moments when a small thing still finds me, like that reflection today, and suddenly I feel the old tenderness rise before I can negotiate with it. But I am learning not to fear that tenderness. It does not mean I am going backward. It means I am still alive in places the world tried to make numb. It means I did not let disappointment turn my heart into a locked room. It means there is still light moving somewhere inside me, even if it arrives through a mirror I did not ask for. Look at me when I say this. The goal is not to forget the people who made us more human. The goal is to carry them without losing ourselves. I think that is the balance love eventually asks for. Like an orbit, it needs gravity, but it also needs space. Too much distance, and the connection becomes cold. Too much grip, and everything burns. Real love learns the sacred distance, where two souls can honor what happened without destroying what still needs to grow. I did not understand that before. I am trying to understand it now. And maybe you are trying to, in your own way, with your own memory, your own quiet name, your own ordinary object that suddenly becomes a doorway. Maybe you have walked past a window and felt your chest tighten because light landed in a familiar shape. Maybe you have heard phrase and remembered someone's face before you could stop yourself. Maybe you have smiled in front of people while carrying a private ache no one in the room could see. Don't pretend you haven't felt it. I know you have. That is why this moment belongs to you too. There is nothing shameful about being marked by love. The shame would be pretending we were never touched. The shame would be becoming so proud that we call numbness freedom. I do not want that kind of freedom. I want the freedom that includes truth. I want to move forward with my heart open, not erased. I want to build a life where memory is not a prison, but a chapel inside me, a quiet place I can visit with respect and leave with peace. That is how love becomes meaning instead of pain. Tonight, I choose to believe that the mirror did not come to hurt me. It came to remind me. It reminded me that ambition without tenderness is incomplete, that success without presence is lonely, and that love, even when it changes form, can still guide a person toward grace. I saw something small, and it carried carried your reflection. But maybe the deeper truth is this. It also reflected me. Not the man I pretend to be, not the man the world measures, but the man still learning how to love without fear, remember without breaking, and let silence become holy instead of empty. I think this is where I finally stop asking the mirror to give me an answer. For a long time, I believed every reminder had to mean something immediate, as if the universe was placing clues in front of me and asking me to solve a hidden equation. A reflection, a song, a familiar silence, a light falling across the room in a way that felt like your presence. I kept wondering whether these signs were signs, tests, or unfinished invitations. But today, I feel something quieter than certainty. I feel acceptance. Maybe the mirror was never trying to tell me what would happen next. Maybe it was only asking me to honor what already happened with more grace. That is not easy for a heart that still remembers. The heart wants conclusions. It wants the final sentence. It wants to know whether the love it carried was meant to return, transform, disappear, or simply become part of the foundation. I have wanted that clarity too. I have wanted life to sit across from me and explain why some connections feel eternal, even when their form becomes temporary. But maybe not every sacred thing comes with an explanation. Maybe some love is not here to be solved. Maybe it is here to make us softer, wiser, and more honest than we were before it found us. I used to think peace would arrive when I stopped feeling the ache, but now I know peace is not the absence of feeling. Peace is the moment I stop fighting the feeling like it is my enemy. I can miss you and still be okay. I can remember you and still move forward. I can see something ordinary and feel your reflection pass through me without turning that moment into a wound. That is growth I did not recognize at first. Growth does not always look like forgetting. Sometimes it looks like standing still, breathing deeply, and saying, yes, this mattered, but I will not let it imprison me. And here is the final turn, the one I did not expect. I am grateful for the ache because it proves my heart did not become mechanical. In a world that teaches us to optimize everything, to move fast, to protect ourselves, to reduce every emotion into a problem, I am grateful. There is still something in me that can be moved by light on glass. I am grateful there is still a place inside me that refuses to treat love like weakness. I am grateful that success did make me unreachable to my own soul. That would have been the real loss. Look at me when I say this. The deepest love is not always the loudest love. Sometimes it is the love that stays quiet because it has matured beyond demand. It does not need to announce itself every day. It does not need to conquer, possess, or prove. It becomes a blessing. It becomes a prayer without drama. It becomes the way I choose tenderness when bitterness would be easier. The way I allow another person to live freely, even if a part of me once hoped their freedom would remain close to mine. That is not defeat. That is devotion, learning dignity. If you have carried someone like that, I want you to stop shaming yourself for it. Don't pretend you haven't looked for them in small things. Don't pretend you haven't felt a name rise in your chest when the world went quiet. There is nothing foolish about remembering someone who changed the way you understood love. The only danger is forgetting yourself while you remember them. So remember with care. Remember with breath. Remember in a way that keeps your heart open to life, not closed around absence. Let the memory be a mirror, not a cage. Because love, when it is real, does not only ask, will you stay with me? It asks something deeper. It asks, will you become more truthful because of me? Will you become more patient? Will you become more present? Will you stop confusing achievement with arrival and start asking whether your soul has a home inside the life you are building? That is what you taught me, even in silence. You taught me that the future is not only a place I reach, it is a person I become. And I do not want to become someone who wins the world, but loses the capacity to love gently. So I will keep building, but I will build differently now. I will carry purpose without letting it erase tenderness. I will pursue the horizon without forgetting the sacredness of the person sitting beside me, or the memory of someone who once made me feel less alone. I will not let ambition become a wall. I will let it become a bridge. I will let love remind me that strength without softness is incomplete, and vision without connection is only distance with better lighting. The point is not to run from the heart. The point is to let the heart give direction to the road. Maybe you are not here in the way I once imagined. Maybe life chose silence where I once hoped for closeness. Maybe timing carried us into separate rooms, and maybe there are things I will never fully understand. But I do not to turn mystery into Riznain mystery. I can bless what I cannot control. I can release what I cannot hold. Can be thankful for the way one person became a mirror, showing me both my longing and my capacity to love with more truth than fear. That is enough for today. And if somehow these words reach the part of you and drew reach the part of you that still remembers some quietly, then take this as a soft blessing. May you never confuse silence with worthlessness. May you never believe that love failed just because it changed form. May you be brave enough to keep your heart tender, wiser to let people be free, and patient enough to trust that what is meant for your soul will not require you to abandon yourself.